When I tell you that we have 17 cards to talk about, I am not joking when I say that this is the biggest OTA in Marvel Snap's history. However, we are going to be discussing the ramifications and the reductions or reversals of the last fortnight's, I don't mean fortnight, I mean bi-weekly, 2 weeks ago, experiment with the OTA on all the tech cards. Let's start with those right now. Starting off, we've got quite a few cards here that are going to be seeing a return to their previous form. Killmonger, of course, is going to be getting back. This card definitely was pretty much forgotten when they had nerfed its ability to only destroy all one-cost cards in its lane. Thankfully, this is going to getting a little bit of a return, which I'm happy to see. We also have Cosmo is going to be going back to its cost of a 3/3 from a 4/6, which is, again, I think as much as I didn't love some of these cards, I don't mind this change as well. I think Cosmo is a card that can be really difficult, but also in terms of Deadpool's Diner being able to include a lot more interaction, a lot more fun times, I'm pretty chill with this. We also have Shadow King, who's going back to his 2/2, again from a 3/3 stat line. Again, good things to see here. I think this is all pretty fair. The only one that I think I'm going to start saying that I don't know if I love it is we do have Goliath getting completely reverted again back to its 6/9 stat line. Now, I do know that it's nice, but I also don't think it's that nice. I'm not a big fan of Goliath, the fart cloud, as I often call it. And so I do wish this one would stay. I think the meta is better when you have less Goliath, because I don't think that Goliath is a interesting card, nor do I think it creates interesting gameplay. But this is one that is also going to be seeing return to form, as well as Red Guardian's also just going to be getting completely reverted. Now, this one, I don't know if they needed to completely revert either. I think a 3/1 probably could have been fair, but with Move being able to run around rampant because there's not a good answer to currently a Madam Web or Sparky, I do kind of feel like this might be unfortunately fair as well. But those are the 5 reversals, I don't know, from the previous OTA, the tech experiment. But we still have 3 other cards inside of that OTA that are going to be either seeing a staying in their current form, or they're going to be reverted in a different way, and let's talk about them here. And I'm choosing to use the yellow color instead of the blue on these just because I think I like the way to show that these are going to be staying the same, but they are also, it's technically a change from when we last remember. Negasonic Change Warhead is going to be remaining at the 4/5 stat line, as well as Enchantress, which a lot of people have argued, and I would agree that this is actually a buff and just a cooler card at a 5/8. They both, Second Dinner said that for both of them, they feel like this has improved their play patterns to help downgrade the total impact that tech cards can have in the metagame, just being able to do way too much currently. And they said simply, they want people to play less tech cards. Or a smaller number, I guess, but still have many of them ideally impacting the game with their points as well as their effects. So both of these make a lot more sense with particularly talking about Negasonic. Negasonic, they say that it reduces the likelihood that she's just going to be snowballing a location and stopping the amount of time where she just looms over the entire game, being like, okay, what am I going to play to sacrifice to her? Makes it a little bit more catch-all, as and you might want to be playing it later, which I do like in general. I think this is going to be a fair change. And additionally with Enchantress, which I just really enjoy here, they talk about how this allows you to just have more proactive applications. It also dramatically lowers the amount of games where she's played on the final turn, or alongside other tech cards, to just flip the table on how the game was being played up until that point. And they say they feel good about these changes for the long term of the game, and I do agree. One thing that I didn't think about initially, but I really love with especially Enchantress here, is the fact that this is now a really cool way and a simple way, especially as you're learning the game, for you to be able to have a nice curve into your Electro play. You can go turn 3 Electro into turn 4 Enchantress without wasting any of your energy, which I think is a really big deal. It also creates some interesting dichotomy between Cosmic Ghost Rider, one of the newer cards that came out in Marvel Snap. So in general, I like this stuff. I think it's pretty cool. And that's only remaining or leaving one tech card. Shang-Chi. Shang-Chi is going to be a 4/3. I have it as a 4/2 in my little thing. Oops. Anyway, he's a 4/3. I definitely have the wrong image here. But he's going to be a 4/3 now, and it's going to be the same ability of destroying only one card that has 10 or more power, which I really like. And Second Dinner actually knows something really interesting here about Shang-Chi. They said that this limited OTA didn't give themselves nor the community enough time to meaningfully gauge this subtle difference between Shang-Chi's. Their hope is that if Shang-Chi is single targeting, he still remains a potential tech on solitaire-esque huge deck points that are just running wild, but will also warrant the opportunity for players to make more interesting strategic decisions on whether or not to stack a location with multiple high-power cards. Now that's just directly quoted from what they were saying here, but I love that. You couldn't do that before, right? But now an actual answer to Shang-Chi, which kind of just felt like there wasn't one before, is just, what if I put more big cards in this lane? Shang-Chi can deal with one of them, but you can't deal with all. And I think the biggest thing that I will come back to, and I really love as a change, is the location, I think is Radioactive Lab, which makes all of your cards there Hulk out after turn 3. Previously, you didn't want to play there before because Shang-Chi just stopped it all. But now this is actually just a legitimate answer, and you can play to that location with legitimate impact. And the amount of locations that will benefit Shang-Chi also become worse. Monster Island, yes, it exists, but also doesn't mean that you just completely get your game plan destroyed. Nidavellir doesn't mean that you can't put anything actually impactful there, because Shang-Chi blows up anything that has any 5 or more base power. Now this is just an interesting card, and I like it. I'm hoping that this is going to be okay. They said they're going to keep this for a while, potentially even through the next Golden Gauntlet tournament. I think I've heard rumors that it might be at the beginning of next month. I don't know, but that's going to be potentially awesome. But yeah, I love this stuff, and Second Dinner said they were pretty happy about the way that this OTA experiment turned out as well. And this is the one point where I will say, give feedback. Second Dinner wants feedback on how you all felt about this OTA experiment. I enjoyed it personally, but I also understand that not everyone really did. I like the idea of what this did, and I hope they're willing to do this again in the future, as it did kind of feel akin to these, I'm going to just call them the imbalance patches that they used to do a couple of years ago. Those didn't do well, I'm assuming due to just engagement and metrics, but this type of stuff where they're just saying, hey, let's just make the game change it up entirely, put it on its head and just spin it around, see what goes on here. That's really cool. So I liked it a lot. Let me know what you think, and let Second Dinner know what you think of this tech pseudo balance experiment, yada yada. But that's the end of the tech cards, and we're not even into all the actual changes and everything else happening in this OTA, because when I say this OTA is a big one, I mean it. With a nerf to Colleen Wing, going from a 2-4 to a 2-3, which I think is a really cool bit of change. Various flavors of discard decks, Second Dinner says, have just been strong for a while, and I think that's been a fair point, as Dakin discard's been good, and now actually just regular discard, even with this current OTA, has been pretty powerful. And they don't know what to do with that, because it's difficult to just bring points away from those scalers, but also making it so that they are generating really big amounts of numbers, so that if you just made it so they only hit a little bit, it wouldn't matter. But then some of these different decks, if you made it too big of a change, it would just be too impactful, too much. So Colleen Wing going to a 2-3 is a really interesting change, and I think it's cool. But the only thing I don't know if I love about it is the fact that we are about to get a card, according to data mines, at the beginning of next season. So when I think about 2 weeks from today, or like just under, Zombie Power Man, who's going to have a stat line of 2-4, which at the end of turn discards the leftmost card from your hand if you're winning his location. Now, I don't mind that Colleen Wing is getting this hit here, because I feel like they're trying to open this space that you have a potential answer for why you may not want to play for that card. But also, I don't know if I love that, where they're going to say, hey, we're going to make this card worse, but then we're also going to release another card that's going to be pretty interesting following. Now, I'm not saying that's what they're doing. I don't believe that's entirely it. I think there's a lot more dichotomy and a lot more interesting stuff to go with here, because honestly, Zombie Power Man could be a pretty rough card, because then you could just continually get your hand discarded completely, and then you have nothing left. So I don't know how that's going to work, and I'm not going to pretend like I know the answer. But I also don't know how much I really love this change. I think it's good that they're going to be hitting discard in some way, shape, or form. I just don't know if this is my personal choice, if this is the one that I really like and or would have done myself. But I understand it. I think it makes sense. I honestly think that there are other discard decks that have been doing a little bit better. And Second Dinner agrees that there are other discard decks that are doing pretty solidly. And if you're White Wayne Brady, you're not going to love this next one. And if you do not know who White Wayne Brady is, that's a member of many communities who I'm personally familiar with, and he's a very large fan of Agatha Harkness. Agatha Harkness is going to a 6-12 from a 6-14. which is a really interesting change. And I don't know how I feel about this as a whole. Now, Agatha's been a deck that actually enables like hella stuff in order to be able to do multiple things at the same time, which I think is pretty cool. But then it's also been a very interesting card inside of Black Knight decks, because then you just have a guaranteed card that actually makes your deck smaller, which is really cool. Kind of interesting and similar to what used to occur with, I believe her name, America Chavez. So I don't know how much I love all this stuff, but they do say that we like that this is a unique card. This makes a unique deck, but it's also, she's just a free card, and we don't want it just to be relegated to nothing if you put it back, if it's like just in your deck or whatever. So they're just bringing her win rate down, hopefully a little bit here with that 2 power. And I don't know how much this is, I think this might legitimately stop her from being played entirely. I don't know, we'll have to wait and see, but I feel like Agatha's been a pretty cool card and pretty interesting, but the fact that they're just going to be taking 2 power away from this is going to be a pretty big deal and very impactful in my personal opinion. I don't know if this is going to be the end of those Agatha Black Knight decks, and I'm not going to try to say that it is definitively the end, but also they're saying that basically because your deck is going to be smaller in the long run, you do not need to get as much of a benefit. They're trying to say that even though she has the detriment of controlling your cards, the benefit is you just get less cards in your deck. That increases the amount of odds that you get the other cards that you actually want for your enablers. So it's interesting. I really don't know. I get where they're coming from, and I'm excited to see where this goes, but gut instinct says that this is going to be a pretty rough change for the card. Hela is going to be pretty much dead. But if Hela's going to be dead, then the counter to Hela is actually Stardust, right? Or it was. As Stardust is actually going down to a 4-6 from its 4-7 stat line. Now, this is interesting. This is a card that I think a lot of people were talking about when the tech apocalypse, whatever you want to call it, occurred. They were saying, okay, well, Stardust is just left unchecked, and I was one of those people. I was surprised by that. And Second Dinner said this has been a standout tech card since release, but I'm actually really glad, legitimately, that they did leave this card at a 4-7 during the tech apocalypse or whatever, because Hello was a really good deck, and this stopped it from being too good. And I'm happy about that. They said that it's had a considerable usage and win rate, and it increased even during, they call it the robot takeover. And they like what Stardust can do, but they just don't want it to be as good. So it's only losing a point of power here, which as a 4-6, I legitimately think is going to be pretty fine, and they think it can still play its role pretty well. I honestly wouldn't be complaining if they took away more points of power away from Stardust, but I understand where they're coming from with this, and I do like this change in general. I think it's going to be completely fair. Stardust is a very good card, very powerful card, and as people were trying to figure out what other tech cards they could be running when all of the bigger tech cards got nerfed, Stardust was one of the ones that naturally rose into its spot. So 4-6 for Stardust, I think it's going to be completely fine, completely playable, and it's more than fair here. And we're getting to the end of the actual nerfs. So let's talk about the card that I think everyone and their mom has been speculating about getting an actual buff here in just today's OTA. To the surprise of literally no one, Viv Vision is getting to be 3 power instead. Gosh, her text is so much. It really is like, you see how much I had to cram it all to fit into this little thing. But she's going to a 3-3 from a 3-2. And Second Dinner talks about how they were actually a little bit concerned about Viv, and according to data mines, she was a 3-3 at first. They were uncertain, and they thought it would enable too many snowballs and just going to be a little bit careful with it, so they decided to put her at a 3-3. And I get that. I think it's a fair play. However, the number, like, it just hasn't worked. She hasn't been an optimal card in any of the decks that you're playing her in. And so, well, they're going for it. They're going to leave her at a 3-3, see how she feels, and they want to gather more data to figure out what they need to do with her. Because they said they're willing to make it like a dramatic adjustment to her design if they need to. And I think I'm glad to hear that, and I think this will be interesting to see what occurs with Viv Vision here. I'm excited for a different change to her. I hope she's going to be interesting, and I hope she will be played a little bit more, because I do think it's a pretty cool card. Can bring some pretty interesting stuff with Clea that I really enjoy, as well as just doing hand buff things. So I'm not going to complain about that, but I also don't know if this is going to be a good card. However, I like the change. I'm excited to see where this goes in the coming weeks. But that's, again, not the only buff. We also have another buff to a card that, if I'm not mistaken, I even think I heard something about this card being one of the coolest cards in the Masters of the Arcane. Is it Masters of the Arcane season? I don't know. Let's talk about Dormammu, though. Recently, Dormammu's third skill, his third spell, his third step, whatever you want to call it, recently that was brought to a 2 cost from its previous cost of 3. Now, it hasn't made a difference in Dormammu, and Dormammu has continued to be low. So Dormammu is going to get an upgrade to his base power, going to a 7/12 baseline. Now that 7 cost isn't going to be a very big deal, as typically you're not spending the 7 cost to play it. You're typically just trying to play all the other skills or spells out in order to play him for akin free, but not quite, and you'll understand why if you played it before. But his play rate near release was quite high and sustained, but it plummeted because people realized, oh wait, this card isn't great. And that's unfortunate because they said this is a card that people find fun. And I agree. I think it's a really cool card, really fun card, but it just has been really not great. So this is a card personally I'm really stoked to mess with following this OTA. I think there's some really interesting decks out there that I've seen, actually a Clog Merlin deck that really has been wanting Killmonger to destroy the entire board, and now gets that option here and can use that with Dormammu in a pretty fun way and pretty interesting way. So I like it, and I'm interested and excited to see what's going to occur with Dormammu here. But he's not the only destroying card that's going to be seeing a buff in today. Other than Killmonger, obviously, we have Destroyer. Destroyer has just been bad. This is a card that they've continually tried to buff up and try to find an interesting place in the meta, and it has struggled repeatedly. And they're going to keep putting power into this card, if I'm not mistaken, until they figure out a place where he can actually exist. Or is it can actually exist? I don't know, but it's a 618 now from its previous power level of 16. So getting 2 additional points is pretty cool and pretty interesting. And I'm excited to see if this is going to make a difference. I don't know. The fact that this is actually now the second biggest 6 power card in the game, only akin to, for base stats, only next to Infinite there, is a really big deal. And it's a very big amount of power. I don't know if it's going to make a difference, though. Honestly, this feels like a card that if they changed it to be a 5/12 or a 5/13 that still did the same thing, maybe that would be slightly more played. I don't know, though. I like what it can do. I think Destroyer is a really cool card. It's a very thematic card. It just destroys. But is it going to matter? Is it going to make a difference? That I'm uncertain about. But it's going to make the Asgard besieged location a lot better. So that's cool. Now, when Awesome Andy came out, I said Awesome Andy is awesome, and he's now getting a buff to a 2/2 from a 2/1. This makes it a 2/6 essentially, which I think is really cool and really interesting. And they're actually specifying that this card is getting buffed because Jocasta is coming out, because they think that Jocasta is going to enable a bunch of fun synergies and really interesting stuff, and they want to make sure that those outputs are as interesting as possible. So the activate cards that are seeing some, or not much, play, they want to give some love to. So Awesome Andy is going to be going to a 2/2, and I like it. I think Awesome Andy is going to be a pretty cool card, pretty interesting card, and I'm excited to see if he's going to be, I don't know, just not garbage in a bit. I'm interested in just in general, I think, how activate cards are going to be doing post Jocasta's release, but we'll have to wait and see for that. I don't know. I like it a lot. I think I'm really interested in it. But then they're talking about a different activate card that should you use this card with Jocasta, though? Should you use it? I don't know if I want to use Lockjaw with Jocasta. Honestly, in terms of all of the activate cards, I think Lockjaw was the one I had thought the least about. Jocasta, if you don't know, by the way, is going to be a 3/3 activate ability. Perform all of the activate abilities at this location without using up their actual activate triggers. And I don't know if I'm going to want to use Lockjaw with it. It's going to be interesting. I do hope it's going to be better. They said that they want people to be excited by Lockjaw because the previous buff didn't generate the positive reception they were expecting, which is interesting. I guess they just want this card to be better, and I don't know what is going to occur here. Even with it at a 2/3, now it's at least like decent stats for its cost, and it still gives you a benefit for its ability, but it's going to be a interesting change, especially due to the fact that we have cards like Stardust who did get a nerf, so maybe it means that Lockjaw will just get better. But with Stardust just saying that it turns off Lockjaw's ability and makes you just lose a card instead of anything else, it's a little bit unfortunate. I don't know. I'm excited to see what's going to happen with Lockjaw, though. Maybe this will get the reception and the attention that Second Dinner wants it to get, but we'll wait to find out. And the last one is a change that I don't think a single person saw coming. It's one that I'm personally really interested by, and is technically a buff, but I think it's better framed as a nerf potentially as well. Mystique is going to a 3-1. That's from a 3-0. This is the first time I think I've seen Mystique changed, as far as I remember from Marvel Snap playing. Maybe she was changed before, but I do not have the recollection of that bit. But they said this is a buff to a fan favorite. And they said this is a sneaky small nerf to Mr. Negative, as Mr. Negative's a deck apparently they're keeping their eye on. They actually are trying to look at that. I didn't know this, and I think it's pretty interesting. But Mr. Negative is a deck that's potentially too good because of just how much it can let you do, how many big combos you can do with it. And now Mystique just says, hey, this isn't a card you can now draw with Jane Foster, which is a really big deal. When you Mr. Negative Mystique now, this just goes to a 1-3, not a 0-3, so you still have to spend 1 energy on it, which is a big deal if you don't have your magic on the board. Now you have to spend all of your energy on something else. If you had a 6-drop that you had to play for full stats, and you wanted to play Mystique, you can't do that. It's a really interesting change there. It does, like I mentioned before, make it so you can't get her with Jane Foster. You can still potentially draw her in general, but Jane Foster no longer will draw her unless Cassandra Nova has done something that we are not aware of. This is just interesting. I don't know how much I feel about this one. This one's going to be a big deal. I think that's going to make a very large impact on the metagame. And I'm excited to see how that's going to be received in the coming days and the coming weeks. But I like it. I think it's going to be pretty cool and pretty interesting. And I'm happy about this stuff. This OTA in general, I think, is one that I'm pretty happy with. I like the OTA. I think this OTA is going to be really solid, really good. And I like the fact that they are keeping some of the changes from the tech cards. I do wish a couple more of them, Goliath, had actually retained their nerfs that they had received, but I understand why they didn't. And I like the buffs and the nerfs that they did otherwise throughout the rest of this OTA. I think I'm interested to see how this is going to go. And let me know, by the way, what you think of this video, because I did try to go through everything a lot quicker than I normally do. I normally spend a lot more time yapping about every single change. Didn't today. I tried to go through things quickly because, for one, we had 17 different cards to talk about, and for two, I wanted to just test out a different format. So let me know about all that stuff down below. Let me know what you think of this OTA down below, and I appreciate all y'all hanging out. I will talk to you soon, hopefully for a pretty fun deck. I think I want to play Dormammu. Let me know. Peace out.